This podcast is brought to you by Asus ProArt Displays, expertly crafted for photographers, vloggers, and cinematographers alike. ProArt monitors deliver industry-leading hardware, unparalleled color accuracy, diverse connectivity choices, and the renowned stability of Asus.
Passion is something which I think you are given. You're blessed with the passion which you have. What happens is that we're listening to everyone.
Yes.
And then we're trying to process, is that the one? Or is what he's saying? I better follow what he's saying. Or take all that information and then have that conversation with yourself.
Welcome to another episode of Creators Nukkad, a podcast series by Pixel Viilage where we explore journeys of remarkable creators. And I'm your host, Radha Krishnan. Today we are thrilled to introduce to you Dinesh Khanna, a preeminent Indian photographer, a documentary photographer from Delhi. His portfolio has an eclectic mix of subjects from food, and people and cultural heritage. His profound mix of artistic vision and storytelling are exhibited in his renowned coffee table books, The Bazaar and Living Faith. He also is the co-founder of Delhi Photo Festival and the managing trustee at the Nazar Foundation. His exemplary work has graced galleries worldwide. Join us as we delve into the world of this exceptional visual storyteller. So, after years of waiting, you're finally at Pixel Viilage. Welcome to Pixel Viilage, sir.
Thank you so much. And really, it's been, 5 years since we've been talking about this, and I've been threatening to come over, but never really living up to the threat till now.
No, but your presence were always there. Let me tell you, it's not an exaggeration. I'm not saying it because you're here. Well, for the benefit of our viewers, let me tell you that this after knowing him for 5 years, okay? We met after 5 years.
Yes.
And we actually touched each other to check if we are real. Right? Or we were just imagination of. He has been a guiding force behind Pixel Viilage in more ways than one. Every time I needed a suggestion, either it would either come as one post from him, which probably you never probably even knew that such a thing happened. Some post that I...
Well, you can't escape my post. Now I post so often on social media.
So often about everything under the sun.
I am like a constant threat over there.
Yeah. If not with a real camera, with a mobile phone, though.
Oh yes, of course.
Your morning walks are...
They were made for me. They were made for photographers like me, so they're like my fifth limb. I can be taking photographs all the time and sharing them. Yeah.
So he reached out to Pixel Viilage, or rather, whenever we started doing these, humble mobile phone videos and camera review videos, and he liked them, and he expressed that liking in one of the comments, and that's where the first time we connected. And ever since you've been helping us in one way or the other, and like I said, we met.
Helping is your generous way of putting it, but yes, I've really enjoyed and loved following what you're doing and understanding what you're doing and learning from what you do.
So that is actually my next question is, well, I don't know how many hats you wear. You change them so seamlessly that people don't really
Considering I've got little hair left, I should be wearing more of them.
You are a hardcore advertising man. You still are an advertising person. You're a commercial photographer. You do documentary photography, which is entirely different from commercial photography. Yeah. You do your own personal work. I've seen you doing honorary work. You teach photography. I don't know if you realize that you do so many things.
I know you. I'm getting tired listening to all this. No, I really
You're
do all
an
this.
amazing friend to a bunch of fortunate people.
I love that part.
You are an amazing family man, and you do it so seamlessly, so effectively, and manage to keep that smile on your face always. How do you do that? What's the secret? I mean, that's the first question.
I guess the secret, if there's any, is the fact that don't be aware of what you do. Be aware of who you are. Be aware of what engages you. Be aware of what interests you. And let those things speak to you so that in turn whatever attracts you, you in turn then engage with. And you express with whatever device, whatever means, whether it's talk, whether it's photographs, whether it's conversations, whether it's reaching out and meeting people, it's then that becomes seamless. And of course, then whoever is the person or this, event or the situation which you are working with or dealing with, that in itself then, tells you how to behave, tells you how to, engage with that, tells you how to put yourself out there. And I find that if you let all these things become virtually instinctive rather than something which you constantly deliberate and process, then they are fairly seamless.
Yeah, I mean, it is fairly seamless and it comes, I mean, it feels as if it is coming out without too much effort.
Yeah.
So you used the word passion somewhere. But I've seen people doing one or two of these very effectively and losing out on many, or they're not as expressive or as effective in most of the other stuff. But in your case, your energy is same everywhere. I mean, that's the secret I wanted to know.
It's just so funny that you say that. You think that I have a lot of energy and I, use a lot of it. I consider myself, I prefer to believe I'm a lazy, sedentary person. That I don't do much, I just watch and I do engage. And it's only when people like you or friends, say, "Arey, tu wahan bhi tha, ye bhi kiya, wahan bhi pahunch gaya." Then I say, yeah, I did. But for me, it's just like,
That's very natural for you to...
Yeah,
I mean, I always refer it to as Kapil Dev's cricket. He makes cricket look so effortless and natural.
I would imagine.
Yeah. You don't make an effort to. You see when certain players play, you see an effort to play that stroke and make it look perfect. This just comes.
But I think that's the point about passion. Passion is something which I think you are given. You're blessed with the passion which you have. It's something which along the way as you grow older, and I'm going to sound a bit spiritual here, it's almost that you feel blessed for the fact that it's something which has been given to you. But having got it from jahan se bhi aaya, I have no idea where it comes from. But then you spend time processing that you have that, understanding that you have that, and honing it. If you don't hone it, which is where I will now use one of my favorite terms, which is riyaz, which to my mind is very different from practice. Practice is that, you like...
Repetition.
Someone tells you ki ye fir kar, fine. But riyaz, to my mind, is when you do things again and again, but with the understanding and the sensitivity to be able to correct, to evolve, to grow it. And that, when you do that with whatever you're passionate about or what engages you, that's actually you. So there's no separation, is what I feel. So photography or what I like to photograph or the kind of different subjects I do, they're me. It's just, I don't need to sit and say, "Arey, na ab ye karta hu, arey wahan chale jata hu." You just do it. It's, I'm sorry, it sounds like...
No, it is. But it's
mumbo
still...
jumbo or something, but I guess,
That's again, you're making it sound so easy.
Yeah.
I want to ask this question towards the end of the session. So, since you've brought it up, let me, begin with it. How do you understand that it is your passion? Because somewhere I read the most stupid excuse that you can give somebody is that, you see, what you have to do is to follow your passion. But
I know that's I think it's almost used to make a person feel small rather than make a person feel great.
Correct. How do I understand
know what your passion is?
What your passion is? In your case, you were fortunate enough to have understood what that passion is, or that one, something that came from somewhere which is in you and which you're nurturing through Riyaz. Now, how do I understand? People find too late, either they find it too late or they don't find it at all, or they find the wrong thing. So is it a fault that is built in us?
Okay, so let me just take this slightly away from the passion part of it.
Okay.
I think what a lot of us don't realize and don't do enough of, even if when we realize, is have a conversation with ourselves. Passion, will you come and tell me what my passion is? Will my teacher come and tell me what my passion is? Will my parent tell me what my passion should be? Everyone
They all
does.
tell you.
Everyone does.
They all have an opinion
so
about.
therefore, what happens is that we're listening to everyone.
Yes.
And then we're trying to process, is that the one? Or is what he's saying? I better follow what he's saying? Or take all that information and then have that conversation with yourself, right? And this is something which I realized many years ago, that it's when you actually have the patience to sit back and say, let me talk to myself. And it's true whether it's about discovering what your passion is, or whether it's understanding, is this the subject you want to photograph? Or is this the subject you want to photograph in this way? All of it, actually, there's a conversation which is happening. But are you conscious enough of it? Are you participating in it? Is the big question. And that, to my mind, is where, and especially in today's world, which is full of so many distractions, so many deadlines, ye bhi karna hai, usko bhi milna hai, oh my God, ye nahi kiya. You don't allow yourself that stillness.
Very important.
That sthirta, which has to be in you. And when I talk about this, people say, oh, but I don't have the time. I say, you don't need time. These things are done in nanoseconds. You need practice. You have to train yourself to think that way. You have to train yourself to believe that is the way it ought to be. And it doesn't take too much. It's just you'll actually find, once you realize that's what's missing and that you are open to that it's a very small shift in behavior or in time management or how you approach yourself, and suddenly you're there.
Yeah, you don't need any.
You don't need to read some self-help books or watch some kind of, maybe that helps too, but that again depends on the kind of person. Maybe I've done that. I'm sure I've imbibed those things from various such sources, but at the end of the day, it's still you who has to implement it and use it and stay with it. So that, to my mind, is really about passion. It's because also what happens is there's too many people who tell you what are the passions of the day. Is it photography? Is it fashion? Is it dance? Is it
which is
being a scientist, or should be
trending, which is most popular, most paying?
So you are half the time then you're confused between what's the trend and what's the passion.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that understand yourself, speak with yourself. So that's the only way you'll find that.
Wonderful. Wow. I think we started well. But I just want to take, I know about you. I've heard you speaking in many platforms about
Too many
yourself.
platforms, is it?
But, I mean, for Pixel Village viewers, I'd like to just give them an idea of how did photography started for you. I know about your father and the influence your father had in you. The two things that I would like you to probably say again is the influence and that stint in US.
Okay.
Yeah. So those two things, because I think that'll put a lot of things in perspective, and then we'll come back to your life in India.
Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this short because I do tend to meander and go all over the place with this answer. So my father was a photographer, and so therefore, when I was in school and college, so his was the influence. Also, very importantly, since this is the film age, and we're talking about the 70s and 80s probably, access to a camera, definitely access to film, definitely access to being able to process film and then make prints. वो हर किसी के लिए नहीं था, because as you know, film is expensive and always was, which is the reason why there were fewer photographers earlier, or people even could even say that I'm a photographer. So that way, I had the luxury of having a camera, having a film roll once in a while. It wasn't like he said, "Here, take this," 1 dozen rolls of it. But which again, in a way, is a good thing because you realize that these 36 frames, you got to make them count. So that's how I learned the basics of photography. Because the good thing about film is that while you're learning the physics and chemistry of light and what film did and how it reacted to light, along the way you also understood how you were approaching making a photograph. Whether it's in terms of composition, what kind of light you want to use, what kind of subjects you want to engage with. So that was a very beautiful thing to my mind about film photography, and that therefore I did in an early stage of my engagement with photography, thanks to my father. But having said that, so through school and early college, etc., I had access to a camera, and therefore to be able to make pictures and prints, which is also very important. But I didn't want to be a photographer, and because my dad was a photographer. And I had this kink in my head कि हिंदुस्तान में होता है कि whatever the family business is or the father's profession is, that you're expected to follow that. If your father has a shop, you have to go and look after the shop. If your father is a cobbler, then you become a cobbler. It's part of the caste system and the way things have been. And I said, "नहीं, ये नहीं मैं करूँगा," even though I know I love photography. So somehow or the other, because I wasn't a very great student, I got into advertising. That's a long story on how I got, so let's not go down there. Otherwise, this is going to be a serial rather than a podcast. So, which is actually, to my mind, was a great place to be, because advertising, at least in the 80s and 90s, was a place which, now this is my reading of what it gave to me. It gave you, on one hand, the ability to be able to deal with people, to understand what it meant to be a team player, to understand that people have different pluses and minuses, different strengths and different negatives, and how to be able to use that collectively to fulfill a particular, whether it's a brief or requirement by a client. And that is something which, as a photographer, because photography, as you know, is a very solitary kind of let's say, medium, at least in creation. I mean, you are the only person behind the camera. It's not like, there are 10 other people looking into the camera. But while being in advertising, and I was in client servicing, I was not a photographer, I was not in creative. So the idea really then is to be able to have a team which comes together, in understanding a client's brief, the requirement, the product, the market, on the creative side, who writes well, who's a great visualizer, etc. So I spent 10, 11 years of that, and I think that is now when I look back, that's what enriched me as a person on one part. The other is that when you work with talented people who know the game, or on top of their game, you start imbibing, even without really realizing what you're doing, a certain sense of style, a certain sense of aesthetic, a certain way of looking at the world. From simple things like understanding what is a good-looking font for a particular use, to what colors work really well. And this is not something I was doing consciously then, but when I look back, I do realize that my sense of composition, my sense of the use of color, my sense of storytelling, because storytelling, advertising storytelling.
Yeah, it is full of stories.
It comes from there. And that then brings me to this other point, which I think is very important, that we understand where we've been, what our life has been, because our influences come from there. I think, unfortunately, a lot of us think that I've been through that, where am I going? Of course, it's important to know where you're going, but I think it's equally important to once in a while understand, where did you come here from? And so what did you carry from there? What are your influences? Because actually, on a particular day, that is what you are. That's what makes you. And that is what you engage the world with. So father's influence, advertising influence. And the third influence for me has been travel. And so going back to the early time when, my dad used to give me a camera to use, I also was able to borrow the camera and say, go out for a day trip or an overnight trip to, say, Jaipur or Agra or Mathura, places around Delhi which weren't too far away. So the sense of what else there is in the world other than just my family and my own life came to me rather quickly. Also in Delhi, we lived in West Delhi in a place called Karol Bagh. And there's a very big and important market or bazaar, I would say, very near a house called Ajmal Khan Road. And one was used to going there, one went there frequently. So then when I look back, why did I do a book called Bazaar? It's because I've loved the bazaar. It was seeded. I didn't have a choice. It was me. So when you look at those things, then you realize that those are the things actually you should be using and not just look for external stimuli and external influence. Of course you should. But what about you? You are a fountain of a lot of influences already. Your life has given that to you. So that really has been my journey. I'm obviously now telling you how it has been rather than the actual milestones. But
No, but it's very important how you connected all that, and
this is a recent Dimag ki batti jalne.
no,
It's happened to me in the last few years because once you get into your 60s and all, and you're able to then look back. One, you have enough to look back on. Two, then you also have the time and probably the patience to be able to say, let me just engage with what my life has been.
I totally understand, because whenever I get an opportunity to interact, I said, you are a sum total of what your past. Right from the book that you read, the friends that you had, the movies that you saw, the plays that you grew up with, it's all sum total of. So Rafiq used to say you have two ways of dealing with it. If you want to change, you have to unlearn a lot of things.
Right.
Or pick the one which you're closest to and work on that.
Yes.
So there are so many challenges that I faced in my commercial photography life, and I decided I don't want to unlearn my past because I liked it. I wanted to remain like that. So anything that did not allow me, or wherever my past, maybe you can call your luggage. If it's come in way, I didn't want to remove it. I was happy with where I am. So instead, I could not engage with certain situations. So I said, okay, that's perfectly fine with me. I am not going in that route. I'm taking a route which I am comfortable in taking. So I totally understand when you say bazaar came.
Interestingly, talking about the bazaar, it's just like I said, there comes a time in your life when you're able to accept these things, whereas there's a long part of your journey when you probably, like you rightly said, what Rafiq said, you say, hey, this is not me, this is not part of me. It's like today I'm able to say that, living in Karol Bagh or being born and brought up in Karol Bagh, which is like a lower middle class, almost like a refugee post-partition kind of settlement area in Delhi, I was embarrassed about that. While I was in school, because I went to an English medium school called St. Xavier's, so there were people from South Delhi, richer families and all that. And there as a 12, 13-year-old, it was like, where I'm coming from is something which, I should be, if not ashamed of, but embarrassed about, all right? So those are things which you carry as a kind of a hurt or something to be hidden away. Till then you start getting to be honest with yourself or frank with yourself about, so what are your roots and where did you come from? And it obviously took a while for me to say that, look, this is something which I accept. I could well have, and I'm sure there are other people who've had similar background who said, nahi, ये वाला suitcase जो है, इसको छोड़ दो, कहीं और भेज दो इसको. And which is fine. Maybe they found someone, like you rightly said, found some other part of their past which they said, okay, this is the one which I'll evolve. So what I mean really is that have that conversation with yourself constantly. In that conversation, understand who you've been, where you've been, what's influenced you, what you really liked or disliked. Make that a part of you. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to use that part of you. Then you use parts of it depending on what you're engaging with it.
I think it's a big takeaway for many.
So that it's not that you नहीं ये मैं नहीं हूँ और यही मैं हूँ. Come on, life also there's a lot of things which happen extraneously which you have no control over, which also then dictate or at least modify where your life is, and therefore modify who you are and what you'll become. And to my mind, that's the beauty of life. Be open to that. Yeah.
You happen to work with one of the most creative advertising agencies of that time.
Oh, yes. What a blessing. Yes.
Enterprise.
Yes.
I also, in the early 90s, I came to Mumbai in 89, and, that's a time when all the Bata campaigns and lots of campaigns from enterprise. You used to, so the ads carried a key number.
That key number.
Right? The key number, so which is the agency. From the work itself, you could figure out who the agency is, and from the visuals, you could understand or figure out who the photographer was. I used to do all that. So I'd like you to kind of give a sense of how advertising was in those days. You also work with advertising agencies even now. So if you can just put that into perspective and talk a little bit about advertising then, advertising now.
Well, so I worked for, I think, 5 agencies in my stint of 11 years in advertising. But the first one was an agency called Graphisads, which actually was a very small agency with 3.5 people. And I actually got that job thanks to my father, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of, waiting for something to happen after college, etc. And in that time while I was waiting for something to happen, I worked as a garment quality checker in an export house in Faridabad. I worked as a calculator salesman, not computers. Computers weren't even invented yet. Calculator salesman for one of these sister concerns of HCL. And they had just started at that time. And I used to sell calculators in Sadar Bazaar, which is Old Delhi. So that's a story in itself. But so that about a year or so I spent doing that till my father got me this job in Graphisad, where I spent about 3 or 4 months sitting at a desk wondering what the hell am I doing here, So that is what it was. Then I got a job with Clarion, and which fortunately got me to Bombay, and which I really think is, these are things which turn your life around. There's certain events which, because Bombay as a city to be in is a great place for someone in their 20s to be, whether it was in the 80s or whether it's today. I think it's very important in India for anyone to be able to live and work in a city like Bombay, because it just changes your outlook and your mindset totally. So I was in Clarion, and my boss was a person called Krishnan, who incidentally I met yesterday, because I hadn't been in touch with him all these years. But about a year ago, we got in touch again, and every chance I get, I want to meet him, because he really, I think that he's one of my gurus. He took this boy from Karol Bagh and turned him into, sorry for me saying that, somewhat a sophisticated person who understood, the modern world. And I think, so that was the funny part of that. But I think what's important is for us to have a mentor or a guru who's able to let you understand what are your capabilities, because they see what your capabilities are. Because usually you're too young to be able to understand that, what is it that your strength is. And that's what, a boss like Krishnan does. Or a boss like Mohammed Khan did for me in Enterprise. So anyway, I spent, some time in Clarion, spent some time in Lintez, and then I started the Delhi branch of Enterprise, and Mohammed was my boss there. So like I said earlier, the entire learning from advertising is an understanding that you are not the beginning and the end of it all. That you are one player, or you have one role to play in a larger picture. And then to be able to understand that, yes, you still bring value to it. And the value you bring to it is because someone else, or 2 other people, or 3 other people are also bringing value to that end product or that end communication, which is where, your role becomes important. And I think a lot of people don't understand that if you've not been in a corporate situation or in an advertising kind of situation, that is something which you have to have. You can't just be a lone ranger. And I think a lot of photographers, unfortunately, do tend to think that because, like I said, photography is a very solitary medium at the end of the day, that they know it all and they will, it's their vision which ought to be respected, etc. Okay, so but what was the business like at that time? It was a great club.
Yeah.
There was no pressures. Indian industry was very much
There were pressures, but you never.
You didn't feel it. It wasn't killing you.
Because you were enjoying it. You were in it with.
Or there were pressure, but there's no stress. And especially when you had, bosses like Muhammad Khan who insisted that as an agency, because we are respected as a creative agency, and Muhammad, as a matter of principle, said, we will come up with one idea, we will come up with one campaign after having studied the client's requirements and aims and objectives, etc. And that's what we'll present. That we are not a supermarket which says, ye lo 6 options, acha aap bata dijiye kaun sa, nah. And, it takes a lot of guts, and I think I can say balls, since this is not going on Doordarshan, to be able to do that. But one can do that, but actually have the material to be able to, make that a statement of intent. You have to have substance too, which Mohammed has and which the agency like Enterprise had. So the beauty of that really was to be able to put together a team, to produce work. And since you said this is the right thing to go ahead with, you actually spend a lot more time thinking about what you're doing and what you're producing and what you're creating. And that, I have a feeling, that is one significant change in advertising ever since. So that's what I hear from people or friends I know who are still in advertising, that there is a lot more, whether it's interference or participation, depending on which way you want to see it, from clients who will tell you what to do at one end.
Absolutely.
Or agencies then just, saying, here, take this idea too, and you tell us what to go ahead with.
I've heard about.
So, that change from being a creator to a vendor, which is something which you very rightly said, that transition, I think, probably happened. I'm not saying that's the way all advertising is, but that is probably the mahal today.
Currently, I mean, from being a creative contributor, a photographer suddenly became a vendor too. So then you have all the other problems that come along with it. But what is your take on the mainstream advertising as on now? So because mainstream is still there, correct? Probably you will not see a 4-page or 4-ad campaign or a 6-ad campaign and a half-page Times of India's anymore, which continues an image-building campaign anymore. It's all more catalogy in nature. But still, mainstream is very solid. Television, newspaper, billboards. Do you think it's going to stay, or stay as like this, or is it as effective as you used to be?
So the very nature of what constitutes advertising, I think, has changed. Of course, the fundamental that what is advertising is about communication. It's about communicating the benefits one would get from a particular product or service, or situation. That will never change, because that is advertising. But how it's delivered, what the message is, and through what medium it is delivered has changed, I think, initially somewhat, and subsequently radically, if you look at the last 20, 30 years, to a point where today, because your means of communication or dissembling the information is so much and so fragmented, that your message gets fragmented. So that thing of having one master campaign, which built the brand and the brand values, to my mind, that has got diluted simply because if you're going to be going through 35 different means of communication, where are you going to be able to present that particular idea? Or maybe I'm missing the point, but I don't see that. You're absolutely right that I don't see what used to be a 4-ad campaign or a 6-ad campaign or a 30-second TVCs, which had one idea which said, I stand for the brand, or this is what the brand means. certainly in newspapers and magazines.
Especially
it's
those
totally
clever
gone.
advertising,
Yeah.
intelligent
And that, I
advertising.
think, photographers like you and me, and the reason I think we're talking about this is because we built our careers on that
Absolutely.
and
we-
our reputations. And we are saying, oh shit, wo kahan gaya?
kahan
So
gaya?
therefore, in a way, we are happy that, okay,
Yeah, we were
our
a
time
part
was,
of that.
it was great to be part of that.
Yeah.
No, the high one got with the double spread in the India today. I mean, for you, it was, for me, it was like, boss, I've arrived.
Absolutely.
Both as an agency and as a photographer.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've had a few half pages in Times of India front page, billboards in Bandra, those were like your, oh, you got one there? Wow, that's, so that excitement.
Because now what do you say? You tell a person, hey, just watch out for that, one ad before that particular thing in YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
I don't look at,
So that's where it got fragmented, because the people who consume Facebook is one, the people who are on Instagram likes probably product placements rather than ads being played out to them. And so there are various different ways.
Yeah, because the ad really is more of an irritant, because you went to YouTube to go and look at a particular video of someone, and suddenly you have to, even though you can, after 5 seconds, you can get out of it. But there again, you are engaged with it, and therefore it's a bit of to my mind, it's a distraction, if not an irritant.
I also see a change in the level of acceptance of a creative product. In advertising, like you said, I'm sure all those great art directors that we worked with will never let any of those get out of their agency if you produce anything like what you see on social media today, most of it. So is creative, your layouts and ads and stuff, which is created out of either an AI or using a template. I really feel sad seeing it, but that's a reality. Now, what is that? Is it only a phase where traditional classical advertising is getting transformed? Is that transition stage? Is that why there are so much of trash would be a bad word to use, but a lot of not very okay creative stuff out there in the internet, and people are still accepting it. People still there, I mean, you don't require a nice, interesting, well-produced, lit, well-narrated ad to sell a product. I mean, they just come, talk about the product, and go away. So what has actually changed?
I think two things really, and that really has to do with the kind of medium or media which is available today. And in this case, I think we're definitely talking about social media. Social media has democratized the possibility of being able to put out your message. All right, let's say that's the positive part. The negative part is that so many people are putting out their messages, whether as brands or whether as influencers, that the person who's receiving it only has that much attention, all right? So the kind of messages which are being sent out are unfortunately being sent out keeping in mind that this person is going to get distracted very fast. So let me say something straight away or as obviously. And when you're getting very obvious, so what is the one thing you're not being is being creative. But necessarily in a creative communication, there has to be a beginning and a middle and an end. You have to build up a story.
Yes, we're just not there anymore.
Which is there if you're doing a 3 or 4 minute kind of an advertorial TVC or whatever it is. But there again, I wonder how many people today have the patience of actually sitting through it, or saying, yo, aage karo,
whatever, I'm watching a full-length movie.
Yeah. So it's just to come back to photography, for instance, for a moment in this kind of situation. We all happily say, and I'm one of them too, that what digital has done is democratize photography, right? Which is great. Because actually what that has done is like writing allowed all of us to express our thoughts, all right? Or speaking allowed us to express our thoughts. Today, digital photography, because it doesn't cost anything and it's so easy to do, allows people to express visually. But whereas there were 10 people earlier being able to express visually, so therefore, it was taken with a certain degree of respect. Today, there are 1,000 people you encounter within that hour of being on Instagram or on Facebook, that actually the good stuff gets lost in that stream or that torrent or that tsunami, whichever one you want to think of.
Yeah, the algorithm sort of.
Yeah, so
blame it on
it's,
the algorithm. Yeah.
And when something gets democratized to such an extent, what it means that at least for the larger mass of people, everyone's equal. Where the ability to own the device to make a photograph seems to be the reason for being a photographer, rather than the fact it doesn't even matter a shit whether you have a camera or what camera you've got, as long as you've got the mind to be able to compose and engage. That, to my mind, gets lost. And whether it was advertising or whether it's photography, we see one of the things which are now getting less and less are who are our heroes?
Yeah.
Who do you look up to? What happens in a democracy, and which is good for a democracy politically, is you don't need heroes. You don't need political leaders who say, "Ye to mera bhagwan hai," which unfortunately is probably happening in India. On the other hand, when it happens to an art medium or a craft, that you have no heroes, then who do you look up to? Who do you want to be like? Who do you want to grow up to be like? Who do you want to be influenced by? And I think that is a huge loss. So that's happened to advertising and that's happened to photography.
So do you mean that the real heroes are not really getting the limelight? Is that what you're trying to say?
So they are. What's happening is that they, of course, things like Instagram allow you to do is to be able to create your bubbles of influence.
Yes.
All right. So within that, you are a hero. Okay. But that bubble of influence you have, are those people, do they have enough sensibility to photography or to the creative to say this is a hero worthy of being a universal hero? Which if you were to, and I don't want to take names here, they were photographers or they were artists whose names meant something, Today, names, there are lots of names that mean something, but they mean something within a certain bubble of influence. So that's the shift.
So basically, the number of followers or number of subscribers decide.
And which is fair enough. I mean, I'm not finding fault with this. As far as I'm concerned, I'm just a viewer. I love watching what's going on. Yeah. I can neither change it, or nor do I want to change it, but I want to understand it. Yeah. And my understanding, rightly or wrongly, of what's happened with social media is this entire ability to broadcast to the world, all right? But at the same time, there's a fragmentation, and there are these bubbles. I literally see them as bubbles of influence you have, where within that little world, you say, "Main to mahan, tu bhi mahan." But outside of that, what does it mean? Yeah. And there, unfortunately, what happens then is that you're not looking at too much else. So you're not trying to imbibe, other influences. That's the other thing I find, that people are not looking at, if you just look at the work of the 25 or 50 or 100 people you follow or who come onto your feed, you don't go seeking.
Which again is pushed to you because of your liking. Yeah. The algorithm does that.
So it's actually, kind of making your world smaller and smaller in a way.
Yeah. And also make you believe that that's correct. Or that's all there is.
Yeah. I have a feeling YouTube might not let you put up this part. Huh?
In fact, YouTube in that way is very, I'll say it's very impartial. It is.
It's a platform.
It's a platform.
It's not a censor.
It's partial to its viewers. Yeah. Whatever is the viewer is looking for, it just gives it to them. So
Which is
you and me doesn't matter. I mean,
So actually, the interesting thing really about social media is that it allows you to actually create worlds of your own, right? But does it make you myopic, or does it make you worldly? I think at the end of the day, it depends on the individual. Absolutely. There are some who are seekers who want to go outside of what they know, and they can seek. Yeah. That very thing which is restricting them is actually a great way for them to go out and seek new.
I mean, so in fact, that was my next question: the strengths and weaknesses of being in social media, and for a creator to be living in, because now you are a storyteller and you're a creator, so that's how you're known in this in this present day and age. So I wanted to know I want to know the strength and weaknesses of social media. How does it play? If you start looking for a certain kind of story in internet, you will get only that story. Only the counterpoint or the other story doesn't come to you because you're looking for a particular story. But in a bookshelf, everything is staring at you. You have a for and against in front. So if you are a clever user of social media, and if you understand, and you are not just a consumer, you're an intelligent consumer of internet, then you should be you should ask all those questions, correct, in your head. Okay, now I saw this side, let me look at the other side as well. Then you start giving it to you. Perfect. So you talked about creating. I mean, the creators create a bubble and love to live inside. But there was a time when instead of fitting in to a system, you used to prefer standing out, right? Do you think that's happening now, or if it is not happening enough, would you encourage that for creators to do that?
To be very honest, even earlier when there was no social media or a means of being able to, create a bubble or to be able to stand out, I think the human tendency has remained the same. It's just that the facilities have changed. When there was no social media, if there were 100 creators of whether it was art, whether it was painting, whether it was photography, or whether it was song and dance, 90 people still were happy staying within their baradari, staying within their parivar, or staying within whatever they knew. And there were always those 2 or 3 who said, "Hey, listen, I want to step out. I'm feeling suffocated, or I have some new ways to do certain things." I would imagine that percentage, by and large, because that, to my mind, is the human percentage, remains the same, except that the arenas change. And because the arena is a larger arena today, so the numbers one deals with or can deal with are much larger. But the human tendency to be someone who is happy being part of mainstream or the normal or the accepted is the same. And the maverick is still there. Is there and always was there, but it's always remained a very small percentage. And those are the ones who then create the new trend or the new fashion or the new way to look at things, and that then becomes the way the others follow. If you study that, I doubt if that's changed hugely. It gives you a feeling that it's changed hugely, because
but it's not. In principle, it does not
I
change.
personally
It's just
think
a medium.
I personally think it's not changed so much, because it's just being human. That's the way we are. There's a certain conditioning, which is genetic, which is there.
You used to do a lot of Banaras. You used to do a lot of doors and chairs. In film days, and you still go back there with your digital camera too. Can you tell us a little bit about that pet project of yours? That there are 2 of them, if I...
Okay, so let's talk about Banaras and let's talk about the kursi, because it's in a way they're very different in what one requires. Banaras is a magical city, or it's a shitty city. Depends on who you are. I have enough people who've gone and said, "Oh my God, thanks for telling us that I should go to Banaras," because I love the vibe, I love the serenity, And on the other hand, I've also got friends who said, "Arey yaar, tu kaise chale jata hai wahan pe? There's so much bloody chaos and there's so much noise, and I couldn't stand the dust." And so each to their own. But for me, I've been going to Banaras, and I've probably been there about 45, 50 times over the last I think, about 35, 40 years.
Isn't this the time that you usually go?
Yes, it's because
Just the
this is
onset
now
of
the
winter.
winter. The weather's better. There are lots of festivals. There's lots more, chehel pehel. There's lots of activities.
And,
So this
the
is-
mornings look so
Yeah,
mystical with
absolutely.
the kind of...
Yeah, and a place like Banaras then also, it's one is of course its own architecture and its own, the way it is, but also a lot of, as far as I'm concerned, is the people's activity, which I as a photographer like to engage with and, then photograph. And that usually happens in the winter months. So for me, Banaras is a city, so through the 90s, once I left advertising and became a photographer, about a year into being a commercial photographer, I realized that, look, boss, the only reason I wanted to be a photographer is not to make money, not just that. I also want to use photography as my means of engaging with and expressing about things which interest me personally. And like I said, I used to, even as a kid, get a chance to travel with a camera. And I realized that, there's a lot more of India, which when you live in places like Delhi, Bombay, Pune, Calcutta, etc., you don't realize how many other Indians exist out there. And fortunately, having traveled a bit, I realized that that is the case with our absolutely fabulous country. India is like a continent which pretends to be a country.
In a way, yes. Yeah.
It is. It's just,
in more than one way it is, yeah.
Look,
yeah.
Tamil Nadu is more different from Punjab than Sweden is from Spain.
Yeah.
So... And which is where I think we should be grateful that it's such a rich nation, that you can, within the boundaries of your own country, can go and have such different experiences. So through the 90s and up to the early 2000s, I traveled a lot to various parts of the country. And that's what I was photographing. And then there comes a time, I guess, when, you start feeling that, one, you're being repetitive, two, then you get tired, and three, you also think, it's expensive. It's, at the end of the day, there's a lot of money involved in that. So I thought that I want to now go to a place and look at that more exhaustively. And that's when my experience of Banaras, which by then also had already been to about 5, 6, 7 times, I thought that Banaras is like a microcosm of India. That whatever I love about India is in Banaras, whatever I dislike about India is also in Banaras. So let me just keep going back there and see Banaras in its different phases, different moods, different times, different weathers, different festivals. So that's been my engagement with Banaras.
Is that going to be a book or something?
I think I've got enough material for 3 books, but will there be a book or not? That's another story about should there be books and what should the books be, etc. There's a very different world today as far as that is concerned too. And the other is that I also have these little projects or series of photographs which are normally dictated by either an object which make me feel a certain way, and that's my engagement, or it could be a particular activity. And even before I realize, then I see that, I've been engaging with this for a while, and then I start building on that. So the one which probably I think you were mentioning was about the kursis or chairs.
Yeah.
So I think it's been about 11 years, and I was in Banaras only when I started that.
Because every time I see a lone kursi, I think about you.
You think of me? Yeah, I own all the kursis in the world. They are mine.
Kursi ka, and I take a picture. There are times I've tagged you. In that shot,
yeah. So that's what people do. It's I keep getting messages from people. I saw this chair and reminded me of you. And normally it's a broken chair. So I was in Banaras and I came out of my hotel early in the morning and I was going to the Ghats to shoot, and I saw this one chair broken down, looks like it had already lived with its life and all that. And it was under this tree which had these beautiful red flowers, and the flowers had fallen at night, and they kind of were sprinkled on the chair like, someone had put flowers in a mandir. And I also noticed there was a chain with which this chair was locked.
Oh.
So the 2 things that struck me was that this, to me, it would look like a broken down chair or whatever it is, but to someone, it is still of value enough to lock it so that it doesn't get, stolen. And somehow there was a certain spirituality to the fact that I've found those red flowers lying on it and around it, So anyway, so I went off to the Ghats and I was out in Banaras all day and, shot and that's what I normally do. And so in the evening, then when if you're out doing street photography, they come back in the evening and you download the images and at least cursorily go through on the laptop, and which I did. And also by this time I was shooting quite often with my phone camera. And so when I looked at my phone camera and went through the roll of film or whatever you call it on a phone, what do you call it?
An album. Yeah.
An album, all right, an album.
Yeah.
And I noticed that there were photographs of 3 or 4 different chairs at different times which I had photographed. And I suddenly realized that, maybe this chair had triggered some idea in my mind. And I was starting to now look at chairs as if they were people, as if they had a personality. And this is now 2012.
Okay.
And 2014, if you remember, was the major general election when the UPA were voted out and the NDA came and etc. And this time the political mahal was bahut garam tha, and lots of stuff was happening. And there was a film called Kissa Kursi Ka, which came in the 60s or 70s,
Yes,
I forget when.
Hindi movie.
And that movie essentially was a satire on political power and how politicians once, to get you to vote for them, will promise the earth and, promise to deliver the earth to you. But once they sit on that kursi, which they were vying for, then the power of that kursi makes them feel powerful and you're forgotten.
Yes. Yes.
So to me, that is what this
Kursi is about.
So the kursi is the Aam Aadmi, is not the
yeah.
political party, but the common man who's lying around living his life, going about to the best of his or her ability to make their lives. And हमारे politician भाई साहब और बहन जी सब कुर्सी पे बैठ के फिर वो महान बन जाते हैं.
You also have Doors and Windows as one more series.
Again, so Doors and Windows is, I've always felt that Doors and Windows were like the eyes and the facial features of a building. It's almost like shooting portraits of buildings. So I find the windows and the doors like they're the eyes and the mouth and the nose of a building. And I've shot hundreds of them.
Yeah. And every time you see, whatever that I have noticed in your posts is every time you post a picture of a window or a door, the excitement is exactly the same.
It might be my 1595th.
The excitement of posting that shot is been the same.
No, it's like, I've been to the bazaars through the 90s and went to enough of them to make a book called The Bazaar, which Penguin had published. But it doesn't mean that I stopped going to the bazaars because I'm done with that subject. I used to joke with my mother that, the people go to different cities for Tirath Yatra and they go to the mandir. I asked, where is the wholesale market? Meko bazaar mein jana hai kal subah. I asked you when I came coming to Pune,
Yes.
I want to stay somewhere close to the wholesale market because I like to go and photograph that. And that vegetable vendors display and the way those carrots and tomatoes play with each other in terms of colors and form are still as exciting as I might be shooting it for the 100th time.
You also have your stories from your kitchen platform. I mean, that's another interesting one. You have those flat lays.
With the phone. Yeah. And that again, as far as I'm concerned, the artist there is Jaya, who works in our house. She, cooks and she looks after the kitchen and the entire house actually. But what I noticed about her is, now that is her art. That she's so methodical and she has a certain way. She doesn't like making a mess. So
is it?
Yeah, and
it's
so I find
domestic help who's.
Yeah, this is Jaya. She's works in our house.
Wow.
So
I thought it was you. You like to cook.
No,
and whenever you.
It's her art. I'm documentation.
Telling you, she can be a food stylist.
I have not put together a single one of those. It's always her, and it's, if I happen to be going by the kitchen, hey, Jaya, ruk ja. There have been times when she's about to pick it up and put it in the kadai or something. Wait, I need to get my phone.
Wow.
And take
that's
a picture
amazing. I didn't know this.
Yeah. So that's the story.
I thought you like cooking, and you're the one who.
I like cooking. I used to cook. I don't anymore because Jaya cooks so well that it would be embarrassing for me to cook in our house. I'd rather eat what she cooks. She's great. But it's because, and to me, really, to me, it looks like she could be a food stylist. Her sense is so graphic
exactly.
And the aesthetics are so
color.
perfect. It's, how she places the knife, and she's doing it without thought. It's all instinctive. It's all natural.
Wonderful. Well, I also saw a conversation between you, Ashish, and a friend about AI. I couldn't hear it because it was not recorded. I saw a post where you were about that discussion.
Yeah.
What is your gut feel about AI? Because a portion of people or a certain segment of people are worried that it's going to take away your job, especially photographers, retouchers, and people like that. But at the same time, the automation also offers a lot of possibilities. What is your,
Okay, so if I can just kind of rewind a bit, as you can see, that's my habit. I'd like to rewind. If as photographers, we obviously, or as human beings, we are aware of and therefore worry about what's happening with us. And what that is what's happening now. Photography started about 200 years ago. The people who were making photographs on glass plates, did they even know that there had come a time when you'd be able to actually move around and take pictures where you didn't have to carry this bulky camera, all right? Where you didn't have to be shooting at 5 ISO or ASA as it was called, and you had to tell people, don't you dare move because otherwise I'll get a blur, right? So of all crafts or arts, whichever you want to call photography, the one which to my mind is the most affected by the changes technology brings is photography. So we came from the 8x10s, the glass, plates, we came to the medium format cameras, we came to the flash bulbs, which were actually just magnesium, which was flaring, to one-use bulbs, to flash, which you could then just power with little batteries, to the 35mm cameras. So now suddenly, you couldn't have had photojournalism if you're doing glass slides, right?
Correct.
But because you had 35mm cameras and you had a film roll which had 35 exposures, now you could be a film journalist, a photojournalist. All right? So if you see, actually, even within the transition of photography or the evolution of photography, what was available then is what people were able to use. And you could then worry, but the beauty or the classicness of the glass plate is gone, and look, this guy just picked it up and went off to Normandy and shot this picture. Because he could. All right? And then came along digital, which of course changed the game entirely. Did anyone protest? Of course we did. Do we romanticize it? Mere zamane mein? Of course we do. Do we not shoot digital? Haha. Of course we shoot digital. So I think it's natural as people to say what was great was always back there. What is the future is something to worry or be scared about, right? If photography has to die because of AI, photography will die. Whether you and I worry about it or not, we still will. Or when photography first came in, I believe what painters thought, it was the end of painting.
Yes.
All right? But they've both found their own niche and their own reason of existence thereafter. Because for an individual, painting was far more, natural. Whereas for a photographer who discovered that medium, to be able to use that was more natural. A1, what I find currently a bit of if I just need to put in 6 words as a prompt and I'll get some picture out of it, I think it's too lazy. But I've been told by Ashish Chawla, who's a younger photographer, he says, no, but you can craft it. You can put in an initial 6 words or 7 words or 10 words, and then you get a set of pictures, and you say, okay, of these 3, I want to use this. And then you use more words to, hone that and fine-tune it and sculpt it in a way. You can say, I'm a sculptor of images. So I am happy for things to change. I mean, we've seen things change enough in our own lives. And most importantly, things will change. Just because it makes me uncomfortable or if I don't want, things to be different, it's not going to stop. So either I can sulk and sit in the corner and say,
exactly.
And then that's fine too.
That's fine too.
No one's going to come and say, nahi yaar, tu aaja.
Fantastic. What do you think you would have been if you were not a photographer?
I don't know what I would have been, but I would have loved to be a rock star.
A rock star, which
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are now already.
No, I'm not. I think one of the most powerful art forms is music. Is to be, because what I like about that, and even between music or being a singer and a dancer, the instant connection with an audience and the instant and constant interaction, to my mind, is the purest and the most strong is with a singer. With a dancer, it's more removed because the audience has to wait till the dance is over and then come and clap or say, that was great. Or as a painter, you'll paint and then, probably it gets put up in a gallery and people say, that was great. As a photographer, at times, with social media today, people know who the photographer is, but earlier you didn't know who the photographer was.
Especially commercial photographers.
Yeah. So, but as a singer, you had the power.
Yeah, to interact directly
Yeah.
with your audience.
So I would have wanted to be that, but
Wonderful.
as a Hindu, I believe in multiple
That
lives.
was exactly what I wanted to ask.
One of the very nice things about being a Hindu.
Do you believe in Punarjanma? That's what I wanted
It's
to
so
ask.
convenient.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I?
I wish you a rock star life. And
Thank you very much.
It's not late. You can be a rock star now, because I see you practicing drawing and painting.
That's
yeah. So, and you've picked it up so well, and you're doing it so well. Maybe
it's
you
again,
should.
I don't know if I'm doing it well or not. Thank you.
So
I'm not being
seeing it,
ungrateful.
but singing,
people say it, but I just enjoy it.
It's not late to start singing.
It's my conversation. वो नहीं होगा.
No.
कुछ चीजें नहीं होनी चाहिए.
Wonderful. I really enjoyed this conversation. Hope our viewers also did, and there were definitely some takeaways for you. And thank you, sir, for coming to Pixel Village.
No, thank you
spending
so
your
much,
time.
Radha, and thank you really. And it's just not just about fulfilling a promise to myself, being here 5 years later. But I'm so impressed with what you've been doing on all these years and what you're doing now. And keep this in the video, because I think it's very important what I'm going to say. Is there are very few people who are evangelists, and you are a photography evangelist. All right? For you, it's your religion, and I'm using the word religion in a very positive way, which is no longer, as far as I'm concerned, a positive term otherwise. But when you love something and you want to share that without wondering about what's going to come back to you, that's what you do. And I respect that. Thank you. And thank you. There are people outside of this who are sitting here and recording this. Thank you very much, too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radha.
Deeply appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you.